residential tech talk, vendors, lighting specialist, residential tech.
Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, our contributing editor, Michael Heiss, joins us from his home in Los Angeles to talk about his experience at last month's CEDIA Expo, including the biggest trends, biggest surprises, most overhyped, and most under-the-radar introductions. This is our third podcast this month featuring a CEDIA Expo focus, but without the perspective of today's guest, my fellow CEDIA Fellow, who is also a CEDIA Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Do you really know the full story about our annual convention? Michael Heiss, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jeremy. Always a pleasure to be with you on the podcast.
Well, we're recording this on October 11th. It's been more than a month since CEDIA Expo. Are you finally recovered?
Recovered enough to start building up my energy for CES. I somehow missed the COVID, but I don't get how, I tracked my walking and all of that, and I walked 20, 25 miles, didn't eat a lot, didn't do any press dinners, and I still gained 5 pounds. How'd that happen? I don't know.
I don't either. That doesn't make any sense. It's the age that we are, I guess,
Don't go there.
don't. Yeah, not necessary. Well, so one of the things I didn't get to do while I was there, but I heard a lot about it, and I know you did too, was the Hollywood director Barry Sonnenfeld's keynote address, and he kind of went on a little bit of an attack on certain resolution issues with video. What are your kind of takes on that? Were you there, or did you just read about it afterwards?
I was indeed there, and in fact, I've been talking to the CEDIA people for years to see if they could get Barry Sonnenfeld. He is a very big home theater enthusiast, and he's done work with Sony, and award-winning director, producer, cinematographer, and he's a real raconteur. He's really a funny guy, and sometimes, and he's got shtick. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's a lot of shtick involved there, but the thing that set the audience ablaze is he's carrying on. He goes, and I've got one more thing to say. HDR sucks. You hear, whoa. And you get just suck the air out of the room. And, and people later carried on and talked about it. And he's not right. He's not wrong. And if you don't like it, you can catch me on this, turn it off.
Yeah.
And this is the age old, don't use enhancement. That's why there's things like the filmmaker mode, or that's why you can turn settings off. And again, he was being a little performative and bombastic, so that's kind of fine. But it was interesting, and it certainly woke everybody up. Yeah. So it was really a great speech, but it did make a point. The most important thing that he said was really not that. He was talking about one of the many mega homes that he has built and put home theaters in. And he was talking about, my latest home in Aspen, good for him.
Right.
And he said, the installer did a great job, but then there are only two in town. I don't know if this was in Vancouver or Park City or wherever it is. I picked the one that I thought was best and did a great job, but then I fired him. Why did I fire him?
Mm-hmm.
Because Aftersales Service, when things broke and when things need to be adjusted, or when you needed to get the guy on the phone, whatever, the guy wasn't there, and he fired the guy, and the guy lost. I mean, this was a big job, and it just shows that the industry is more than just the gear. It's more than just the stuff. It's how the business is run, and I hope that resonated as much with the CEDIA member attendees in the audience as the bombastic HDR sucks thing. So it was a great speech, and if that directing thing doesn't work out, he can do stand up. I mean, it's terrific.
Sorry, I missed it. Yeah, that sounds great, and that is a really, really good message there at the end about this after sales service, because that is a major issue with our industry, and a lot of companies fail at it. And I know that companies like Bravis that are trying to establish themselves as a brand after the roll up years back.
Yep.
That's a big focus for them, is how to make that happen in a better way as a brand. And obviously there's Daisy and there's other brands out there that are trying to become a better, national presence that does that the correct way. It's not been solved yet. There are definitely solutions to help, but companies just they need to hear that. So good on
The
him.
solution, I wouldn't say it's simple. The solution is for the individual installation company or integration company, I guess, to be more current, is just to do your job and keep in touch and keep your customer awareness going, and that's all it takes. And it's not just to keep that particular client, is to get to the referrals. Barry Sonnenfeld lives in a pretty high net worth individual world, and he's probably got a lot of high net worth individual clients. And it's not just that the guy that he fired lost Barry Sonnenfeld as a client, but Barry Sonnenfeld is not only going to not recommend that guy, he is going to recommend to his buddies the other guy.
Yeah.
So it's not just keeping the job that you have, it's continuing the jobs and getting the recurring revenue. So, I mean, I think that in that regard, although some people said, what does a director have to do with CEDIA world? And the answer is a lot, because content is king, subject for another discussion. But I think that was maybe as much an important message as anything.
I agree. So speaking of shtick and comedy routines, you and your buddy Rich Green did your pre and post show analysis. So what was maybe the thing that you guys kind of focused on the most out of that? And we're going to cover a lot of those topics, I'm sure, here today. But what was one of the things that you kind of hit on maybe to look for, and then follow up with after the show and your
right? Well, at this point, the what to look for. The show's over. If you didn't see it, it's gone.
Right.
But more importantly is what we call the post-game show that we did, sort of right before there was still another day left of the show, so that people would know what to see that they didn't. Because for any trade show, whatever it is, you don't want to go home and have somebody say, "Hey, I read in Residential Tech about, did you see it? Oh, I forgot." That was the purpose of what Rich and I did there. And, it was the things that we're going to talk about here. Things like, where is AI? And what is AI? And what does AI do for you? And Dante, and big screens, and then really big screens, and things of that nature. The increasing importance of lighting control and shades. Lighting control has been around since the beginning of the business, but this sort of integration of lighting control, meaning obviously the lights, the luminaires that light up the room, but the light that comes through the windows, or sometimes the light that you don't want to come through the windows. That's important. And how do you automate that? And that's something that in the past few years has gotten a lot of attention. It's always been there. There's nothing, I could catch a little grief from some of the brands from this. There wasn't anything dramatically new. But what was important is a continued importance of that, and the fact that there were more manufacturers showing more options and integrating motorized shades and different kinds of lighting, that all of that integrating into an easy to use common system. That's what we've been about since this business started. And as a trend, the continuation of that is a high point of interest, I believe, was more important than any one particular product. And that's not necessarily my particular area of focus, but it was clear that this was something that was important to a lot of the attendees, and also by nature of the exhibitors that were there showing it.
Well, let's briefly hit on the AI topic, because I think lighting control, shades control, that all is really good stuff. And it's a lot of companies represented there. But AI is more mysterious, and we sort of
Still is.
use it as a marketing tool and stunt. But you've got Josh AI, which is using it a large language model sort of to help.
Well, it's the name of his company.
Yeah, and I guess that it makes sense that you're using voice search in a more kind of sophisticated way. You're getting closer to the answer to the question. It's useful for those who definitely don't want to just go on their phone and look something up, Google something, but just to yell it out loud. Hey, who was the star of that thing that I saw the other day? And helps like get to the answer quicker because of the large language model there. But did you see anything else besides Josh that was using AI in any kind of way that you could point out?
Well, that's sort of a trick question, because what Josh is doing is using it as part of their front end. And as the language models, mature, then it'll have a better idea of who's in the room and what do they do and what do they want to do. And as that sort of thing matures, that will be important. But the question is, what does AI mean? If you stop somebody and said, what does AI mean? And they go, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It means different things. How much of what the AI does is something that you, as the user, are controlling, as opposed to something that's embedded in the system? So an AI television. Well, what is it? What is it AIing? Well, it uses an algorithm. Well, everybody's got an algorithm.
Yeah.
And it's using, embedded intelligence to know what you've done, to know what other things or people have done in a similar situation, and then based on that, do something. Not quite perfect yet, like when they were saying, use super glue to hold your pizza together. So, there is what's called in that world a hallucination, when the AI responds with something that seems right to the language model, but it's silly. So AI, it's a thing and it's promotable, but as I've said, many times, and said in my presentations at Expo, remember digital ready speakers? There's nothing that makes a speaker digital ready.
Mm.
It's a speaker that you might want to be able to accept a broader frequency range or what have you.
Right.
But there's nothing about a speaker that makes it digital ready. HD TV ready antennas. That makes me crazy, because I'm an over-the-air guy,
Mm-hmm.
and we've talked about ATSC, and you need an antenna. But there is no such thing as an ATSC ready antenna. You can either get the signal or you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get the signal, whatever's in it, you can get. So it's AI ready. What is AI? I think that it's something, at least to the general public, that's still a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
And that maybe is our job, and our job as a media source and a publication, and the people who are watching this, their job as people who are, forward facing to consumers, explain to them what AI does, because I think since it is not really yet well understood by the average consumer, be careful Mike's opinion, be careful what you present it as, because somebody may think it's something other than what it is. If that sounds like, politicians' word salad. But what is it? What does it do for me? How much of it is it reacting to what I, the user, do, versus I see a dark scene, I see a light screen, and the AI is going to magically give me, a great picture. So it's a topic of interest. It's something that everybody needs to be aware of. But, I would just sort of wrap that by saying, be careful what you present it as, and know what it is doing for the specific situation, integration, work at hand.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would love a smart home that really is intuitive, that helps you to achieve how you want your home to run or operate without you having to constantly tweak it and put inputs into it. But then there's the other part that's like that smart home threat, that it's going to take over, or it's going to turn into HAL or something like that on you, and so I think that is an awkward dance where how much do you want it just to kind of interpret what you want versus no, just do it the way it's set up and don't change. So
And how flexible is it to any change in the specific circumstances?
yeah,
And that's what this business has been about. It's anticipating what will be needed and providing a way for that need to be taken care of.
right.
And you just have to also, as you just said, have the exceptions.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the other things that just sort of seemed like it popped up and was all of a sudden with every audio company out there. It had been mentioned many times over the recent years, but it was more of this is what we do on the commercial side, but it's not quite ready for residential, but we do this, which is Dante.
Yep.
And basically that's audio over IP, but at a commercial scale level technology. I know you saw it as much as I did and heard it as much as I did, but there were some companies that just really felt like this is the time for it to be in the Resi channel and the CEDIA channel. So what did you learn about Dante? Really? Yeah, not really. Wishful thinking?
No. Dante / AES 67 / audio over IP / video over IP, that you sort of lump that together. There are slightly different ways and standards to do the same thing, but it to some extent goes back to what we were just saying about AI. What are you using it for? Do you need Dante to go from, as an example, from a big surround processor in a rack to an amp that's 2 shelves or in the one rack adjacent? Is there any benefit to that? I would say nominal at best. Sexy, to be sure. Don't need those damned interconnects. Well, yes, you do. You need cat wire instead of interconnect. Okay, fine. Just it doesn't matter what the interconnect is. You better make sure you use the right one and dress the cables properly. For long range throughout a larger house or residence, the question is, what is it bringing? There are clearly places where Dante, or audio video over IP, where that has a place in the market, particularly when you get into things, like some of the processors and amps, like some of the things that Crestron is doing with the Crestron OS, and all the devices that hang on to that. It is a solution. It is one of the solutions. It is, in some places, a great solution. If I'm rewiring a big sports venue or a house of worship, one of my favorite, politically correct phrases, a church or a temple of whatever temple of flavor you're doing, because there are many. There's even Shirley Temple, but that's something separate. One day, I was going to a CEDIA in the UK once and was driving up to wherever it was from Heathrow, and one of the roadsides says Shirley Temple.
Okay.
Was it a pub that was serving non-alcoholic drinks? Was it a monument to an actress? No. The name of the place was Shirley, and they had a Buddhist temple.
Okay.
So it was, and it wasn't even a Jewish temple. It was the Shirley Temple. But I digress.
Yes.
But what are you using it for? What benefits does it bring? If you are doing a big house of worship, that's how I got off on that.
Yeah.
It's perfect for that kind of thing. And if it's easier to run a single cat wire instead of multiple audio and video wires, that's perfect. Well, it's just something that the message from CEDIA maybe about that is that there were more options for that. It's been around. When I go to NAB or you go to Infocom, you've seen it everywhere in different forms for years. And when I go to the SMPTE MediaTek conference at the end of the month, their CEDIA's version of that, all the new broadcast trucks and broadcast plans are all IP based. So that shows that there is a purpose for it. The fact that there were more manufacturers that we both saw at Expo shows that the manufacturers are getting clued in to the value of that in the residential world and are defining and bringing to market products that will suit our needs. So bottom line from that, it's here, it's real, get used to it.
And
just find the right place for it.
Yeah, application specific. So that makes sense. Today's episode is brought to you by the Sonos Era 100 Pro. It's the Sonos solution you've been waiting for. Available in early 2025 exclusively through Sonos partners, Era 100 Pro makes it more efficient and cost-effective to create custom audio setups for your clients. Crafted specifically to meet the needs of both commercial and residential installations, Era 100 Pro offers the same sleek design and acoustic architecture as Era 100, with a range of added hardware and software solutions to streamline your projects. With Era 100 Pro, you can configure more unique setups in new locations with PoE+. Era 100 Pro also provides secure installation, built-in theft deterrence, and multiple options for cable management with pro-grade mounts. And the new Zones capability in the Sonos app gives Era 100 Pro users easier control of their system. Era 100 Pro is the first product exclusive through the Sonos network of trusted partners. Find out more information at sonos.com. You're always really focused on video, obviously, at these conferences, conventions. You mentioned projectors when we were talking before. Obviously, big TVs, but also still we have and micro LED technology, which is expensive but beautiful, getting better. But yet, still projectors out there. So, what did you see on the video side?
More projectors. There were a lot. The projectors live. Even in the face of direct view LED and quantum media, which I think was generally agreed to was the best of that. You can afford it. It's good, but Sony was there, and Samsung and LG and planar and digital projection. There are many choices in that world. But projection, there were new projectors from Epson. There were new projectors from Sony. There were new projectors from JVC. And as always, the manufacturers, I think, are really getting attuned to the market. There were a group of projectors in the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 range. There were projectors in the $8,000, $9,000 range. And then there were the $20,000, $30,000 projector range. And again, of the major brands that were there on the show floor for that, the ones with the hot new products that everybody was talking about were Epson and JVC and Sony, and a lot of that is also dependent on screens and clearly dependent on the skill of the people putting the equipment in and the light, and that's where lighting fits into this. So this is all synergistic, but I think rather than saying, Mike, which one was better, because I won't answer that question, because they were all good. The issue is the fact that there are many of them means that projectors are still a very, very important, viable concept. And one of the things that CEDIA Expo has become famous for, the big demos, the Trinov demo, the demo that Anthony Gramani, if you're listening, Tony, did the Gramani Systems demo and Sony's demo. And there were a lot of big demos. And they were all, with the exception of Sony's, because Sony has the Crystal LED, which is their direct view LED. That was on one side of the booth. But on the other side of the booth, they were showing their new projectors, as well they should. All of the big demos were using projectors. And one could say that I think the biggest, I don't think there's much of a question about that, demo was the demo that was Trinov, Barco, Perlissin, Ophinecia, Peter A. Lett's going to kill me, Ophinecia Acustica, however the Sam Hilly pronounces that name. I mean, a splendid, real all to the wall bespoke demo.
Hmm.
They had a Barco Nertheus projector that was so bright, excuse me, that they not only did they had OSHA warnings on the door, they said before and after the demo, do not get up and turn around and look at the projector until it's off, because you'll have holes in your eyes. I mean, it was that bright.
Yeah.
So for the cost of that demo, they could have easily put any direct view LED system that they wanted in that room, but they didn't. And one of the other things coming out of looking around and reflecting on what was at CEDIA Expo is there's still no one, this is how you do center channel
Yeah.
and left and right channel behind, I was going to say a direct view LED, but a hard screen.
Right.
Because park that thought for a minute. But one of the things that unfortunately wasn't able to be shown for a variety of reasons was the Grimani System sound projector. And again, they just couldn't make it to the show in time for a variety of reasons. But there were over-under speakers, there were over-the-side speakers, there were all sorts of ways to say, how do you get the sound? You can't get the sound through a hard surface,
Right.
whether it's a direct view LED or a 90-inch range, direct view panel, or TCL. And so I will bring it up, had their 115-inch at CEDIA Expo for the first time for TCL, as they're trying to, establish a position in the market that says, I'm more than in just big box stores and Amazon. And it did get a lot of attention. How do you get the sound properly positioned when you've got this? I'm knocking on the monitor there. The sound's not coming through it. The sound's coming through a speaker underneath. That's why everybody was using projectors for the big demos, because you want those huge, ginormous speakers behind them.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that CEDIA, just to complete the thought, did not have. There were many ways to do it, and some were better than others, but nothing's the same as having speakers behind a screen.
And yet Quantum, which you and I agree is the best video demonstration at the show, I didn't feel that the audio was not centered on the screen and it was below in that particular application, just because it was such a high positioning of the screen. I believe that the audio lined up with the ear level pretty well in the seating area. But so there are solutions there. And the Anthony Grimani. I didn't realize Anthony versus Tony was an issue, but are we supposed to say Anthony in official capacity here?
That's his preference.
Okay, well,
I've known him a long time. I can get away with it.
Anthony Grimani's solution, which you referenced, is basically projecting the sound from behind the seating location to the screen and back.
It's a very, as only he can do. It is a very, very clever solution. It's called the sound projector, and if you picture a typical sort of, medium-sized home theater where you've got that projector hanging up behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put in a hard screen, take that projector down and put this other thing mounted up in the same place and bounce the sound off the speaker, off the screen surface. So that's why, and people were sort of giving me a hard time, I call those bouncy bouncies. And to some extent, that's also what the one of the speakers that they were using in the Quantum Media and in some of the other other demos did. It's a unique approach, and if anybody can do it well, there's certainly a guy that knows how to do it. No question about that. That is an evolving part of the art.
Sure.
But what I want to leave from this portion of the podcast is that direct view LED is certainly there, and it certainly does have a place, and it can look really good. It can also be really, really expensive.
Yes.
But dealers, it goes back to what we said before. One of the job of an integrator is to plan it right install it right, teach it right, and service it right.
Hmm.
And so this is the first part. What does the client want? I mean, you don't need to hear this from me. What does the client want? What's the budget? And what is the right solution for the application? Or is this a mine is bigger than yours? I want to be the first one on the block. And there's a place in that for that in the market as well. There's no question about it. But I do want to again leave this part to say that there were in this 90-inch class, whether it's 97, 98, 100, or 115 for the TCL, there continues to be a preponderance. I've seen this, starting back in January at CES and moving through the show season into NAB and into Infocom and now CEDIA Expo of large screens dominating. And that was clearly something that was fully in evidence at CEDIA Expo.
And another observation that I had with regard to video is the competitive nature of categories that used to be kind of exclusive, specifically to Samsung. It felt like the artwork TVs, the outdoor.
The frame. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got to give them credit. They've sort of created a name for it that one of the problems that the other brands, such as Skyworth,
Mhm.
who's trying to really, and in fact, it's interesting that Skyworth, which is a huge brand, a Chinese-based brand, but it is a huge global brand, and they're using what people will now call, finger quotes, the frame-like product to break into the U.S. market.
Mhm.
And they were there with a very respectable product, as TCL has one and
Yeah.
Hisense has one. But when you look at that, you're going to go, oh, that's the frame, which is Samsung's, trademark for this. And you got to give them a lot of credit because they have created a category. And there's the trends versus product. If you see it once, wow, that's a cool idea. But if you come back the next year and you see that there are 2 or 3 other brands doing the same thing, they're not doing it just to throw stuff out. They're doing it because they've seen that somebody else has done it and it's resonated with the public. And they were all very good. One of the interesting things, though, to show that Samsung is not going to surrender the fact that they have invented this, quite frankly,
Mhm.
is they've got the music frame, which is the sort of 8x10 kind of picture frame things that is not a video screen, but it is a hidden speaker.
Mhm.
So they had the frame, I don't know if it was 65 or 75, on the wall, and then they had the speakers around it that were complementary artwork.
Mm.
And so that's, may not be to everybody's taste, but if it is, how many times do we have to say it in one podcast? If that's to the taste of the client, there are now more choices for that. And I think that's a good thing. Or even somebody like Leon Speakers,
Yeah.
where they're building literally the frame, and then they've got a sound bar to match. So, the fact that people are doing product extensions where, if you don't like one of the integrated frame-like TVs, pick your TV and we'll give you something that goes around it. I mean, that concept has been around for ages.
Yeah. Well, you used to
But
roll little like
That's
artwork
right.
across the screen.
That's right. And that concept has been around, but the fact that now flat screens are to the point where they're, clearly commonplace. When's the last time, you saw a CRT other than, at a yard sale or in a museum? The fact that flat screens are clearly have been ubiquitous for, 15 years, this is now something that's a brand build. It's an
Mhm.
add-on, and it works. And for those to whom it's a value, it's a value. If it's not a value to you, then don't buy it.
I thought
But
it,
there are more choices, and
Yeah.
that shows, excuse me, that people are really using this.
that was interesting. Skyworth specifically trying to say we're not trying to be a Me Too. We innovate, and I think the innovation for them is that they don't use the external box with their
Right.
art TV, their canvas art TV. So That's something that Samsung did. They offloaded basically the electronics, right, to make it easier to be flat. So interesting that the technology has definitely evolved as well there, and price points have changed and that sort of thing. One of the things we talked about in terms of the audio side of it was product that jumped out to me as well that you liked it, in addition to the other stuff you saw, was JBL's AVR
MA
solution.
series. Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. They're really trying to appeal to, I guess, Gen Z, or one of those younger generations who maybe would not.
Them kids, get off my lawn.
Yeah. And it remains to be seen if anyone wants beyond their phone or iPad to watch TV at that level. But I hope that it's successful, because it's a beautifully designed product. What did you think of that?
It was, and I used to run parts of a certain major manufacturer, products that they don't make anymore to that degree. Projectors, well, projectors is still there, but AVRs, I spent a lot of time and I made a lot of AVRs. These JBL MA series are AVRs that I wouldn't have never thought about producing, and if I did, I would have gotten shouted down. There are no buttons on there. There are 4 buttons on the front panel. It's thin. It's white with a lucite kind of front panel with one big display. The remote does not have a numeric keypad. It looks like the remote from a streaming device. It is a very, very elegant thing, and it's under the JBL brand name, by the way. And I spoke to the people from Harman Luxury Audio, and I said, what's that? That's not an AVR. What the heck is that? And they go, well, picture this. It's a soundbar, but it's not a soundbar. It is for those who at least understand the need for good audio and want something different. And there's, in the marketplace, there's some value to that too. Oh, everybody has a soundbar. I have an AVR. And if you're in a certain age category, people are likely to say, Gen Zers will say, what the Sam Hill is an AVR? Yeah, I think my grandfather had one of those, and Mike probably did it, but this is totally different. And I'll be very, very interested in seeing how that fares in the marketplace. There was another kind of product similar to that, the Anthem MRX Slim, SLM, but I guess pronounced Slim, which is, you can call it an AVR, but it's only got one input. The input is HDMI eARC. And so that goes in, and it's like, it's kind of 1U high, or, 1.5, 2U high. And it's clearly not going to drive a 22 channel system. It's not designed. It's a, kind of 50, 60 watts per channel, 2 channels driven, and it's only a 5.1 receiver. But if it's in a secondary room or an office or a vacation room or someplace other than a main viewing room or a small apartment, it makes a lot of sense. So that's another take on the AVR. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. And that actually sort of takes you, if I will, to another category, is the R part of AVR. It's audio video receiver. I worked at Harman for almost 25 years, and one of our things was Dr. Harman back in the 50s said, you got all these, well, he didn't quite tell you, much more elegant than I was. You got this amplifier thing, and you got this preamp thing, as the early 50s, and you got this tuner thing, and you got 3 boxes. And Dr. Harman was very, very attuned to industrial design, and he said, what do you need 3 boxes for? Put them in 1 box. Again, not speaking like that.
Right.
And thence the receiver was born. And it morphed from the receiver to the stereo receiver to the AVR multi-channel receiver. But one of the parts of the receiver concept, as originally formed, was a tuner.
Yeah.
Receivers don't have tuners anymore. But there are streaming receivers, and that's where you saw the WIM stuff that Origin Acoustics was showing, and a number of other products like that, where there's no tuner. The audio is coming from streaming. So sort of hold that thought and then say, where's the tuner? Where's the audio coming from? A lot of it, almost all of it, is now coming from streaming, although obviously over the air as well, but that's streamed. So that's either in a dongle, in an Apple TV or a Roku or a Fire TV or a Google Streamer, that type of device, or it's what in the industry is now called a CTV, a connected TV, what originally was called a smart TV. That's where all the sources are coming into. That is how you select what content you're watching. Where does the audio go? Well, you can play it off the speakers in the TV. Yeah, not too loud and it won't sound too good, especially if it's a big room. Or you can put it in a sound bar, and if that's your pleasure, certainly good for you. Or you can put it into an AVR, but you don't need the tuner. Or if you just want music and don't want to turn on the TV, or if you want what we used to call a stereo receiver, if you just have a streaming module in it, like the WIM stuff, like, many other products that were on the show floor, there's your receiver, and it's just a different form factor that old fogies like me aren't used to. But, people like our kids, perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not but one of the things that wasn't at CEDIA Expo, which maybe ties into that, is you didn't see a lot of smart speakers. And there was a time period where you saw things like the Zeppelin. There wasn't that, which is a very good product, but that sort of has gone away for things like the WIM. And there's one thing on this topic area that I actually want to correct you about, is you said something a couple of minutes ago about people watching things on their screens. But, as you know, I'm sort of very into the streaming world. And a lot of the research says that when people get up in the morning, yes, you've got the phone by your bedside and you look at it and go, okay, fine. But you're going to watch a lot of TV on, catch me on this, you're going to want to watch a lot of TV on a TV, on a big TV. Are you going to, depending upon where you are and where you're watching, okay, fine, you want a phone or a tablet. But there is still, in certain times of day, for certain content, the 67% in one survey that I saw last week of people are still watching what we'll generically call a TV or a big screen. So big screens. So, who's the audience for this? All you integrator folks out there, big screens, which we're all talking about in favor of, need big sound.
Right.
How do you get big sound? Could be a sound bar. Good sound bars out there. Could be a baby AVR, or it could be, and yet another, thing where this is all intersecting. The old $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 AVR that you used to see when there were more than one national retail chains, when you used to see them there, ain't there no more. The store isn't there, with the exception of Best Buy. Circuit, is long of blessed memory.
Yeah.
Where do you buy an AVR? You buy it online. You buy it from people watching this podcast, or you buy it from Best Buy. There were, from a number of the major manufacturers, new classic AVRs, a hulking big black thing with lots of buttons and a remote with lots of buttons. But as you move into that sort of lower end now, lower end again in quotes, $1,200, $1,100, $1,500 AVR, now being much more fully featured with all the streaming stuff and room correction. But there was a noticeable increase over the last few years at Expo, and thus in the market, for big AVRs or big receivers with maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, fully capable of driving a big room system, and with big 5.5-inch color displays, and not a lot of buttons, because you've got a color TFT display on the front panel and a volume knob and a power knob, and kind of that's it. So the AVR, I think the AVR is seeing the future. So to sort of summarize that, the JBL thing or the Anthem Slim or Audio Control, I think, is going to have one like that, and a couple of the other brands. That the AVR is seeing that it can't really continue to exist as it was, but the brands, they want to keep that marketplace alive. So they're fine tuning it. Bottom line, take a close look of what an AVR in old parlance does, and what are the options. Or do you want what I like to call a barless sound bar? Because a sound bar is great if you like the sound, you like the convenience, and you're satisfied with the speaker performance and amplifier power of that particular thing, but it's a walled garden system. The advantage of an AVR processor amp, or something like the JBL and other products similar to that, Marantz for a number of years has had a slimline AVR, more traditional looking, but lower profile, lower power, not as many channels, but a lower profile. And I think in fairness to Marantz, they sort of started that part of the category. But if the demand for the room is more sound, more channels, and the ability to use the speakers that you want, not the speakers that are fixed in a sound bar, or the ability to perhaps change them over time, or to keep the speakers but change the AVR, the processor, that's what it's all about. That's why we're having all this fun.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're running low on time here, and I wanted to not leave out something I know is near and dear to your heart. We didn't touch on a few things. I can just quickly mention Kaleidoscape everywhere, yet some optical media still around. Magnetar was one that you saw. Arvolution was another one I saw, which are both optical media, 4K
the laundry
players.
jet.
Yes, the one that I'm getting to that you keep mentioning to me is something I missed completely. You sent me a photo, and I thought, how did I not see this walking by? Laundry jet.
That's what I specialize.
What
in.
is laundry jet? Mike, tell us all about that.
So picture, in an old movie, in the bank or the department store, the train terminal, and these things still exist. I'll use my water bottle here. Something that's about the size of my water bottle, and you unscrew and you put the paper in, and you open a thing, and it goes whoop, and it ends up somewhere else in the building. Pneumatic tubes.
Yes.
I mean, that's an old.
They tried to do that with subways in New York one time, and it didn't work so well. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm walking down in, to be fair, the CIX part of the event, and this thing called laundry jet. And I'm going, what the Sam Hill is that? So if you have this is not for a studio apartment. Like, why would you need it?
Yeah.
But you open up a little hatch, and if you're in an upstairs bedroom, you open the hatch, you throw in the dirty laundry, and it gets sucked in through the pipes, and it moves through the house, and it drops down into the laundry room. And, that's a new expression and application of technology. Maybe it's the name as much as anything else that caught my attention. But, they'll sell a couple of them. That's the nature of the market.
Well, it seemed like a combination of the old laundry chute that my grandparents had in their house, which is just drop it down, gravity does the work. But you can do this from different locations, not just
exactly
right above the laundry. That combined with a central vacuum system, kind of.
But you wouldn't want them both in the same set of pipes.
No.
But they also, we're saying, and by the way, if the laundry is down in the basement, you can send the clean laundry back up the system. I'm not sure I'd want to do it, but you still have to iron it. So whatever. Yeah. But look, every show has got one of those, and that was, for me, the one at this show.
Very good. I'm glad you found that for me, because I would have been sad not to have known that existed at CEDIA. So, Mike, this has been great. As usual,
Thanks,
you brought a lot of great insights, and there's so much that we didn't cover, but we'll continue to write.
Well, that's why we have this pesky magazine.
That's right. We'll do it the old-fashioned way as well. So, looking forward to your continued coverage, and have good holidays there coming up. And thanks so much for your time, Mike.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Thanks for having me on the show.
Michael Heiss is a CEDIA Fellow and Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, as well as contributing editor of Residential Tech Today. And that wraps up today's show, which was produced by Residential Tech Today, IPW, and Pretty Easy Podcasts. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you watched or listened to this episode. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Thursday email newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist to Residential Tech.
Home automation device, home or smart house.